Awful. And I'm thinking, you should have got that Nebraska Farmer and just read them, right? Don't make up your own, Gary. They're terrible, right? We would all look at each other and kind of roll our eyes and say, oh God, here he goes, right? Another bad joke. Right? But I did really appreciate his teaching. Gary is a very, very good teacher. One of the things that I remember from that class is, I think it was after the first prelim, I got one of the questions wrong, and I thought, well, I didn't really understand this. I didn't agree that it was wrong. So I screwed up my courage and went up to his office and said, I'd like to talk about this. Why is this the right answer and this the wrong? It was a multiple choice. It was difficult. Gary looked at it and he said, oh, this is a bad question. He said, it's poorly worded. He said, it doesn't count. And I was like, whoa, this is kind of nice. And then I realized that when we went over the questions in class, and when I later taught with him, he looks at the responses of students to every single question. And if too many students get the question wrong, he blames it on himself, right? He says, it's a poorly written question, I didn't teach it well, whatever. Sometimes he throws it out completely, and other times maybe he only takes half credit off for it. But I learned a lot from that, then in my own teaching, first to realize how hard it is to write exam questions. And Gary used to spend a lot of time when, Chris and I worked with him in the Sustainable Ag class. Gary would draft questions and then bring them to us and ask us to take them, review them, and then we would revise them, right? And I had always assumed before I started teaching that, professors just made these things up, and it just like that, and you had a nice exam. So learning that from Gary was really important about how you write an exam, and that you respect students who come and say, this doesn't make sense to me, or I don't get what you were trying to convey here, and then to say, it's my fault, right? For Gary to say, no, this was a bad question, it's not going to count, right? That was very, very powerful. Then I was also a colleague of Gary's. We did teach together. We were also in the department through its multiple name changes. And one of the things that was really powerful for me in my relationships with Gary was that he was just so genuine and caring. He's a person who would talk about his family, and to be honest, most of the male faculty would not discuss their families. You never knew that they had children or spouses. It wasn't talked about. But I can remember multiple times when Gary talked about being concerned about his children, being proud of his children, about things that he and May Ellen were going to do, or things about his personal life that really indicated to me that he cared, not just about his profession and his life here at Cornell, but that he had an equally rich and important life at home with people that he genuinely loved and really cared about. And that was really a great kind of lesson and a great model to have. I always enjoyed teaching with him. He was really, really good at getting students to respond. One of the things that he did, he realized that when you give a PowerPoint, students spend all the time taking notes on the PowerPoint or slides, and this is maybe even before we had PowerPoints, I'm not sure. But what he would do is then make up a sheet that had the main points with key terms left out, so that as the students were looking at what was on the PowerPoint, they had actually to engage and write some words down, so that then by the time you left the lecture, you had a kind of outline of what had been presented, but it was something that you actually worked on as you were going along, right? So by the end of the term, the students had a bunch of these lectures with key points that would then be really useful for studying for exams. And going on field trips was always fun. You know, we would go to all these different farms. Gary always knew the farmer, had a relationship with him or her, and asked really good questions. And if students were participating, he would push people a little bit to kind of, you know, ask a different question, or he would know a student in the class that maybe was from a farm background herself and say, you know, is this how you do it at your place, or how is it different, in ways that drew out the experiences and understanding of students themselves, so that the interaction from the whole class was greatly expanded. So I have just totally admired Gary from the time I started here as an undergraduate in 1977, and I think took his Forges course in 1979, and then all the time that I have been a colleague with him in teaching. He also comes to, anytime I give a talk on Iroquois agriculture or something like that, Gary always comes and asks good questions and is, you know, supportive, and I, you know, appreciate that. So Gary, I hope you will continue to be active on campus and you know, participate and be the great person that you are.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you for all you've done.